So I wanted to provide a little bit of a follow-up or a very simple overview on how that YouTube track via Tsugi works inside of a course site. I'm over here in Sakai 11, and presumably this would work just this exact same way in Sakai 12, so long as it's been added. So down here what you can see is the Tsugi YouTube track has already been added as an LTI tool through the administrative interface across the instance, or it could be added by using the site info area and just simply adding it as an LTI tool there per each course site using that external tools area. But since I've already gone ahead and added it, then I'm just going to show you how this looks. Inside the course here, because I've already added it, it appears down here as this 5.1 week 1 video here. You can see it's got a logo of a little globe, which I think can be modified. And then, of course, the other thing that's really nice about this, because it's entered in this way, then you can also set your specifications about whether or not the item is required, so the students have to do it first before they can go on to other things. So just as another way, when students do select this, they're presented with what appears to be a subpage here. And you've got the video that's here, and then you have some statistical information here, and you've also got a settings button here to set this up. The first thing you're going to see is you see the video, and it shows up in the standard YouTube player, and then you've got launches here. Launches is essentially going to show you, based on the time specification here, when that video was watched by users or by students. And you can set this by specifying 1 hour, 1 day, 5 days, 1 week, etc., all the way up to the max as far as when it was included. I'm just going to specify 5 days, and you can see that timeline change. And so what this lets me do is it lets me see that a student, so there's a number 1 here, one student was watching it at this time on May 7th, and then other students watched it on May 10th, but there were no students that were watching it concurrently or at the same time. If I did see concurrent students, in other words 2 or more students watching it, then this number here, this number 1, would be higher, and I'd have more of a bar graph that sort of represents different numbers of students. If we scroll here and we go to 1 day, then you can see for this past day, we can see that these are the students that watched it. No 2 students watched it at exactly the same time. So that's what you can see there. I'm going to select back here. And then the back allows me to go to here and see this. I'm just going to go to the views area, and the views lets me see, while the other one lets me see when students watched, this lets me see, this graph here lets me see how much of the video was watched. So this is divided up into time, so the amount of time of the video from 0 seconds all the way up to, in here, in this case, it's about 1600 seconds. I get to see how much of the video was watched in terms of length of time. So roughly, we've got 14 views here, 28 views here, and so we've got numbers of views going across here in terms of the number of seconds. If you sort of drew a line, you could have a line that goes across here that follows each of those bars, so you can see how much of the video is being watched by the students over the amount of time. Let's simply select back here, and we're going to go over here to the settings option, and the settings option provides a really nice little interface wherein you put the YouTube video ID in here that you want the time-based view tracking to be done. And this is simply if you happen to have a YouTube video, I'll pull this down here and we'll look at the share options. So this is essentially the ID here. On a YouTube video, it's essentially this last little bit after the .be in the share area. So that would be the YouTube ID here that's being referred to here, the video ID. And then you can select whether or not you provide students with 100% grade as soon as they view the video. So that means as soon as they select the play button on the video, it would record a 100% grade in the grade book. Or you can select to give the student a grade from 0 to 100% based on the time spent viewing the video. So in this case then, it means that depending upon, for this 1600 second video here, which looks to be about 26 minutes, then the basic premise is give the student credit for however much of the 26 minutes they actually watch. Now, there's a really neat way for faculty or instructors to be able to use this. They could include this functionality inside of a lesson area, making great use and access to lots of very good content that's out on YouTube. But then in the gradebook settings, make it so that that particular gradebook entry, that entry that goes along with give the student a grade, is not included in the course grade calculations, at least from a sort of evaluative standpoint. It might be that the information is helpful or optional, but not necessarily required. And it could even be that the information, such as this video, are required, but that you don't disclose whether or not the student gets a grade based on that. It might just be that you, as an instructor, are using that information to get feedback about are the students watching the whole video or not. This does not, for example, if a student comes to this video and they hit the play button here and they walk out of the room and get on a flight to Florida or Denver, it doesn't mean then that the student will comprehend and completely understand all this stuff. It just simply means that they hit the play button. But it is yet another way to provide some analytic feedback in detail about whether or not students are adhering and engaging with that content. Other ways to do this are to use YouTube video content with assessment question features or follow-up questions, including discussions and that sort of thing, or polls to see and get feedback and engagement from video assets and video content. So how do we exactly get this to be here? That's sort of the mystery. Since I've already added this to our instance, then I can go up here to the add content inside of a lesson, and I'm going to add an external tool. Because I've done that, and there are other cool tools that are here, I can simply select the YouTube track option, and then I can select to provide a tool title. Now what I've come to know is that whatever you put here in the title is what it appears as in the lesson layout. And moreover, this is important because if you choose to include that item as something in the gradebook calculations, you want to be strategic about what you name this, because this name here essentially becomes the gradebook entry title. And if you want to retitle it, you cannot retitle it by doing so in the grade book. You would have to come back and remove this entry and then re-enter it with the name that you want. So for example, if I want to do grade book title YouTube video, then that will be the video, that will be the grade, that will be the title in the gradebook for this particular item. So I've got my icon there. I could choose the other icon to be different, and I'm going to hit save. Once it goes through and it adds it, it'll add it to the very end of the page here. You can see that. And then if we want to configure this, then I would go to the page. And when you get to the page, you're going to see, oh, the video has not been configured yet. And so then at this point, I would go through and select the edit button and then put in the ID. So for example, if we want to use this particular video asset here from YouTube, I got to copy this and make sure it doesn't grab the entire URL, but it's going to, but that's okay. I know how to modify that, so we'll just hack off the YouTube asset thing there. And then we're just going to simply provide this here, so it's giving the student a grade from 0 to 100% based on the time visiting the video. So I'm going to hit Save Changes. It goes and fetches that. It doesn't autoplay, but now it's in there with the same familiar YouTube viewer. And if we go over here, and I may need to pause the video here to get over to the gradebook. Hold on a second. Now when I go back to the gradebook, I can see that there's a new item, and because I'm using categories in the course has been set up to put this item now called gradebook title YouTube video in an uncategorized category. And I can see already that some student has watched roughly 30% of the video. Now, if I wanted to, I could elect to throw this item into a category and then make sure that this item is included in the course grade calculations. Now, if the student is able to go back and watch the video again, then this would change that score to whatever the next highest score is. So it's a nice way to go through and find out, okay, so who in the course is actually watching the videos that I'm putting in there from YouTube? Especially if I don't want to have to give students a Gmail or YouTube account, or if they don't have one already, or if the school isn't a Google school. I can still track which students watched how much of the percentage of video based on the utilization and the stitching together of that tool with the gradebook.